Welcome to Midnight Whispers, where the night doesn't whisper, it warns. As you lie in the safety of your bed, imagine footsteps in the forest, eyes watching from behind the trees, and truths too terrifying to ignore. These aren't just stories, they're echoes from the shadows, real accounts whispered under breath by those who survived. So close your eyes, but don't fall asleep too fast. The darkness remembers.
Imagine stumbling upon a forgotten box at a dusty yard sale, only to discover it holds the key to an unsolved murder. Or what if your harmless vintage find could actually be dangerously radioactive? These aren't plots from a twisted thriller, they're chilling realities, proving that sometimes the most mundane places hide the most extraordinary and terrifying secrets. It was a Saturday, much like any other, filled with the usual errands and the hum of a quiet morning. But then, a yard sale sign, weathered and flapping, caught my eye, pulling me off my planned route. It was a typical scene, tables laden with forgotten trinkets, sun-faded furniture, and a scattering of hopeful buyers. Yet, as I casually browsed, something unusual drew my attention. An unlabeled cardboard box, tucked away on the ground, seemingly untouched for years. It was dusty, its edges frayed, taped shut as if guarding its contents. I crouched, picking it up, surprised by its solid, heavy feel. Just a box of old stuff, the middle-aged man running the sale mumbled, "Feel free to look." A strange permission for something he claimed was so ordinary. With a building sense of curiosity, I carefully peeled back the tape. Inside, a peculiar assortment, a few old hairbands, rusted keys, a small hairbrush, and a scatter of photographs. But what truly leaped out were the newspaper clippings, yellowed with age, their edges crinkled. I picked one up, and as my eyes scanned the headline, a chill crawled down my spine. Missing person, Jane Doe. Several clippings detailed the same grim story. A woman found dead decades ago in a nearby town, her identity unknown, her murder unsolved. The articles painted a haunting picture of a young brunette, last seen at a local diner. As I sifted through, more unsettling details emerged. Tucked among the clippings were grainy, black and white photographs, images of a woman who undeniably matched Jane Doe's description, captured walking alone, entering a store, or sitting on a bench. There were also personal items, the hairbrush, some tarnished jewelry, old, musty clothing. The seller remained silent behind his table, avoiding my gaze, almost as if waiting for me to leave. How could he be so indifferent to the story unfolding in his own yard? How could he not care about this woman, this unsolved murder? His casual shrug, his claim of finding the box in his attic and never opening it, felt hollow. This wasn't just old stuff, it was a fragment of a lost life, a link to a terrible, unpunished crime. I wanted to press him, but his silence was a brick wall. So, I dug deeper into the clippings. Mentions of Jane's boyfriend, a local man, who had vanished the same day she did. His name was there, but no photos. As I pieced together the fragments, an unsettling question arose. Was the seller connected? Was he hiding something? Could this seemingly innocuous yard sale find be a deliberate, chilling trophy? I couldn't shake the feeling. With the box in hand, I paid the few dollars he asked, my mind racing, and drove home. Spreading the jumbled mess on my kitchen table, I tried to make sense of it all. Each clipping, each photo, seemed to raise more questions than answers. When my husband arrived, he initially looked at me as if I'd lost my mind. But as he read the headlines, studied the photos, and examined the personal effects, his skepticism dissolved. Anyone with photographs of Jane Doe would have known her identity, he reasoned. Why didn't they come forward? He tried to find a logical explanation, a coincidence, but I was convinced. This wasn't a random collection, it was too personal, too deliberate. It felt like a dark secret, now unearthed. The moment he reached for the box, his hand snapped back. "Don't touch it," he said, his voice sharp with a realization that had, in my excitement, escaped me. It could be forensic evidence. The next morning, we called the police. They arrived, took the box, and, as far as I know, questioned the seller. A few weeks later, an officer confirmed the box and its contents had been added to Jane Doe's evidence file. While it didn't blow the case wide open, it was a vital development in a decades-old cold case. A small, unexpected ripple in the quest for justice, born from a dusty box at a yard sale. But the surprises didn't end there. On another seemingly ordinary summer morning, I found myself drawn to a different yard sale, hoping for a treasure, never expecting to find a hidden danger. I spotted an old lawn chair, nostalgic for my grandmother's, and wandered over. Suddenly, a strange hum. Not a sound, but a vibration, a subtle energy. It was coming from beneath a table, an old metal box, tarnished with age. I asked the lady how much she wanted for it. She shrugged, said it belonged to her uncle, and she had no idea what was inside. $5, she decided, after a moment. A bargain, I thought, for a little mystery. As I carried it to my car, the hum felt more distinct, a faint, almost electrical pulse in my hands. Just my imagination, I reasoned, eager to discover its contents. Back in my kitchen, I pried open the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of old papers, sat a small metal ball. It was warm to the touch, and the air around it felt strangely heavy, almost charged. A symbol, unfamiliar and alien, was etched into its surface. The papers below were yellowed, covered in bizarre equations and diagrams I couldn't comprehend. Curious, I snapped a picture of the glowing ball and posted it on an online forum, asking if anyone recognized it. Replies poured in, mostly jokes about aliens or movie props. But one comment stopped me cold: "Get rid of it. It's radioactive." My stomach dropped. A wave of nausea washed over me, and I instinctively backed away from the box. What did I do? Who do I call? Just then, a private message popped up from someone claiming to work in nuclear safety. "Don't touch it anymore," the message read. "Move it to a safe place and let me help you." I followed their instructions, carefully carrying the box to my garage, placing it inside a plastic container, keeping my distance. The expert asked for more details: the ball's size, color, the nature of the papers. They explained that old, warm metal objects, especially those belonging to former chemists, could indeed be radioactive. And then, the urgent directive: call the authorities. Shaking, I dialed the police, who quickly connected me to a state agency handling hazardous materials. Within an hour, a team arrived, clad in protective suits, carrying specialized equipment. They scanned the ball with a device that emitted rapid clicks, the frequency escalating as they neared the item. "It's radioactive," one confirmed, grimly. "You're lucky you didn't keep it in the house for long. It could have made you very sick." They carefully packed the ball and papers into a lead-lined container and carried it away. Later, the police questioned the seller, who was genuinely shocked, claiming her uncle had been a chemist years ago and must have forgotten about it. The authorities promised further investigation, but I never heard more. For weeks, the image of that glowing ball haunted me. What started as a whimsical mystery at a yard sale had turned into a terrifying brush with unseen danger. I replayed the scenario in my mind, the close call, the potential for harm to myself and others. I haven't been to a yard sale since. The experience left an indelible mark, a chilling reminder of how easily the seemingly innocent can harbor shocking, hidden dangers. A heated argument over a china plate, a relentless stalker turning a friendly sale into a nightmare, or a beloved community member found murdered after hosting a yard sale. What if your next treasure hunt turned deadly? These unexpected discoveries highlight how hidden dangers can lurk in the most innocent places. But what happens when an ordinary day turns tragically violent? Just months ago, on a balmy summer morning, I set out for a yard sale down the street, drawn by the promise of forgotten treasures. The usual crowd was already sifting through tables, a casual hum of chatter filling the air. My eyes landed on an old lawn chair, a nostalgic echo of my grandmother's, and I drifted closer. That's when I heard it, raised voices, not far off, by a table laden with dishes. It was a woman, her tone sharp with disagreement, arguing with an older man in his late 60s. The bone of contention? A set of china plates, neatly boxed, clearly intended to be sold together. Neither was hosting, they were just neighbors, bargain hunters like me. I initially dismissed it, a common enough sight at yard sales where tempers can flare over the silliest things. People seem to forget they're merely discarding junk, or they take offense when an item's perceived value is challenged. Or, as in this case, two potential buyers lock horns over a coveted item. What began as a confrontational exchange from the woman's side quickly escalated as the old man's voice rose to meet hers. They pointed, gesticulated, words flying a mile a minute, unintelligible in their overlapping fury. My casual browsing morphed into intense listening, then an undeniable glance. Others were turning, too, drawn by the escalating volume. Even the yard sale host began to walk over, muttering, "Hey, hey, hey, take it easy." But it was too late. Before he could reach them, the woman snatched one of the china plates, raising it above her head. My breath hitched. I expected her to smash it, a dramatic "if I can't have it, no one can act." But the old man lunged, taller than her. He easily seized the plate, trying to wrench it from her grasp. With one hand on the plate and the other on her purse, she clung on. He gripped it with both hands, twisting his body as he pulled. He succeeded, but the sudden momentum sent him off balance. He fell, a sickening crack of porcelain on pavement, followed by a long, pained grunt that reverberated through the stunned crowd. Everyone froze. We'd all heard it, knew it was bad. In that suspended moment, no one moved, no one spoke, as if hoping to somehow see what had just happened. The woman, eyes wide, stared down at the man lying motionless on his front. Then, an ominous dark stain began to ooze from beneath him. Her scream tore through the silence. People rushed forward, frantic calls for 911 erupted, pleas for him not to move. But the woman involved in the scuffle remained rooted, repeating, "Oh my God, oh my God," her voice a broken whisper of shock. Those who reached him carefully rolled him over, and then we all saw it, a large shard of porcelain protruding from his stomach. The woman started to cry, her disbelief giving way to horror as we frantically tried to staunch the bleeding. He lay there, eyes wide, breathing heavily, fear etched onto his face. Paramedics arrived swiftly, followed by police. As the ambulance sped away with the injured man, officers began taking statements. I had little to offer, just a bystander caught in a bizarre, horrifying spectacle. The woman, consumed by tears, was taken home by the police for further questioning. Walking home, The image of his wide, terrified eyes staring up at the sky seared itself into my mind. What must have been going through his head and hers when she learned he hadn't made it? My neighbor confirmed the grim news the next day. A senseless tragedy, born from a petty squabble. Was it entirely her fault? I didn't think so. He fell as he aggressively wrenched the plate from her. The police seemed to agree, but public opinion was brutal. People wanted someone to blame, and her face became the canvas for their anger. Though never formally charged, the whispers and condemning stares became too much. She left town not long after, a life ruined by a horrific accident. It's truly baffling how a simple argument at a yard sale can erupt into such profound tragedy. One minute, it's a pleasant Saturday, the next, a life is irrevocably altered. But sometimes, the danger isn't an accident, it's a deliberate, terrifying hunt. A few years prior, I'd decided to host my own yard sale, finally clearing out my overflowing garage. By mid-morning, my driveway was bustling. Neighbors, then strangers, browsed and haggled, the typical cadence of a successful sale. That's when I first noticed him, a man lingering by the tool table, picking up a wrench, then a hammer, turning them over in his hands. He wore a faded grey t-shirt, jeans, and a Dodgers cap unremarkable, yet something about his darting eyes made me uneasy. Assuming he was looking for the host, I approached. He expressed interest in the tools, asking if I had more, his voice oddly flat, like a poorly rehearsed script. I pointed to a box of odds and ends, and he nodded, moving slowly towards it. By noon, the crowd thinned. I was tired, ready to pack up. And then I saw him again. He'd been there for almost an hour, bought nothing. Now, he wasn't looking at the items, he was looking at me, pacing the edge of the driveway. I tried to ignore him, announcing the sale was over, focusing on the last few shoppers. But his presence was a heavy weight. When the driveway was finally empty, save for him, I started packing. "The sale's over," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "I need to get everything inside." He didn't leave. He just stood there, watching, hands shoved into his pockets. My nervousness grew, but I told myself he was harmless, just peculiar. I loaded a few boxes, keeping an eye on him. But when I turned back, he'd moved closer. He stood in the middle of the driveway, looking down at a table. He mumbled something about the tools again, his tone less a question, more a statement. I told him they weren't for sale, the day was done. He nodded, but his hand reached down, picking up a hammer, turning it over again. My throat went dry. "Put it down," I demanded. "Leave." He just stared, assessing. I don't know what triggered it, my words, or a pre-planned decision, but 1 second he was still, the next he was lunging, fast. I stumbled backward, tripping over the edge of the driveway. He raised the hammer. I turned to run, barely reaching the garage before his fingers dug into my arm. I twisted free, yanking away, but tripped over a box of books. He loomed over me as I scrambled back, searching for anything, my hand closing around a heavy wrench. Without thinking, I swung. The sickening thud of metal on bone echoed in the garage. He stumbled back, clutching his shoulder, face contorted in pain and rage. I didn't wait. I scrambled up and bolted through the side door into the house, slamming it shut, locking it, pressing my back against the wood, listening. Silence. Then, the crunch of gravel as footsteps retreated. I crept to the window. He was gone. The driveway was empty, tables scattered. My voice shaking, I called the police. They arrived quickly, took my statement, but he vanished as swiftly as he appeared. Weeks turned into months. Every car, every knock, sent my heart leaping. I stopped holding sales, kept the garage door locked, watched strangers with a new, chilling paranoia. The way his eyes had lingered, the hammer in his hand, it replayed endlessly. The police told me to stay vigilant, but there was nothing to report, just an empty driveway and the phantom presence of a shadow. Items in the garage remained untouched, monuments to a day that scarred me, leaving an invisible mark that whispers, "You're never truly safe." I don't know if they ever caught him, if he's still out there. All I know is that my home, once a sanctuary, now feels like a place where danger waits. Sometimes, the most tragic stories don't involve a confrontation at all, but a sudden, inexplicable act of violence that shatters a community's peace. Dyersburg, Tennessee, a picturesque town along the Mississippi, was one such place, where neighbors knew each other and life flowed quietly. But in 2015, the town was forever marked by the disappearance and murder of Karen Swift, a 44-year-old mother of 4. Her story began on a seemingly ordinary day, a Saturday, October 30th, 2015, when Karen hosted a yard sale at her home. A vibrant, active community member, she greeted visitors with cheerful smiles, many of them friends and neighbors. For Karen, it was a simple act of decluttering, a chance to connect. That evening, she attended a Halloween party, returning home late to speak briefly with her estranged husband, David Swift, who still lived in the house despite their ongoing divorce. Their relationship, cordial yet strained, existed for the sake of co-parenting. In the early hours of October 31st, Karen vanished. When friends and family realized she was gone, alarm bells rang out. Her car, a white 2004 Nissan Murano, was found abandoned miles away on a rural road, tires flat, purse and phone still inside. But Karen was nowhere to be found. Dyer County authorities launched a massive search, volunteers combing through woods, fields, and waterways. Fear rippled through the community. Was she abducted by someone from the yard sale? Was her estranged husband involved? Or a stranger? The worst fears were confirmed on December 10, 2015. Karen's decomposed body was discovered in a wooded area near a cemetery, less than 3 miles from her home. Concealed under foliage, the location chosen deliberately. An autopsy revealed blunt force trauma to the head. Karen Swift had been murdered. But by whom? The investigation grew complex as a list of suspects emerged. Karen's life had been in flux. She'd recently filed for divorce from David, citing irreconcilable differences. Friends described a troubled marriage, with Karen seeking a fresh start. David's behavior, though he publicly denied involvement, drew scrutiny. There were rumors of past domestic disputes, and friends claimed Karen had expressed fear of him. Yet, he was never charged, cooperating with police, maintaining his innocence, but the cloud of suspicion persisted. Other theories surfaced. A stranger abduction after her car broke down? A victim from her social circles or online activity? Nothing definitive emerged. The yard sale itself, a public event inviting strangers to her home, remained a haunting possibility. Could her killer have attended? No concrete evidence ever linked any attendee to the murder. As months bled into years, the case stalled. No arrests, no new evidence. The lack of witnesses and forensic leads left the case cold, frustrating Karen's family and friends. The community of Dyersburg remained haunted. Her children, motherless, struggled to move forward, burdened by unanswered questions. Friends organized memorials, raising awareness, desperate to keep her memory alive. Who killed Karen Swift? Was it someone she knew, or a random attacker? Investigators never publicly identified a suspect or motive. The flat tires on her car, staged or coincidental? The yard sale, a chilling connection, or just a tragic backdrop? Despite immense efforts, the case remains unsolved, a stark reminder of life's fragility and the enduring pain of questions left unanswered. For Dyersburg, Karen's death is a wound that refuses to heal, her vibrant spirit a constant echo in the town's collective memory. These stories reveal the chilling vulnerability hidden in plain sight. But the physical world isn't the only place where danger lurks. Sometimes, the greatest threats come from the shadows of the internet, leading to an entirely different kind of terror. What if every step you took, every corner you turned, was being watched? Imagine waking up to find your world systematically destroyed by an invisible enemy, without any idea why, and no one to turn to. That chilling scenario became my horrifying reality in early 2013, when my life, stable and predictable, was suddenly, inexplicably ripped apart. It began subtly enough. A routine Wednesday morning, leaving my apartment building, I spotted a lone figure leaning against my car in the parking lot. A young man, early 20s, hoodie and ball cap, just staring. No aggressive posture, no immediate threat, just an unnerving, unwavering gaze. "Can I help you?" I asked, a mix of caution and curiosity in my voice. His reply was flat, almost apathetic, yet it sent a shiver down my spine. "Can't nobody help you, homie?" I dismissed it as a bizarre, meaningless taunt, got in my car, and drove away, the strange encounter quickly fading into the demands of my busy workday. But little did I know, his words were a prelude, a disturbing prophecy of the chaos that was about to unfold. That evening, returning home, the smell hit me first. A noxious, putrid stench that made me gag. There, sprayed across my apartment door with a sickening, liquid force, was human feces. Disbelief quickly morphed into disgust, then a gnawing sense of violation. This wasn't a random act of vandalism. This was personal. I immediately called an emergency cleaning service and requested security footage from building management. Reviewing the grainy video, I saw another hooded figure, this one wearing a fluorescent vest, carrying what looked like a package. They'd walked right up to my door, dropped their pants, and committed this grotesque act with a chilling, almost casual calm. The most unsettling part? It wasn't the same guy from the parking lot. He was taller, broader. Two different people, yet clearly connected. But why? What had I done? The police, when I called, were dismissive, even suggesting it might be a prank from a friend. I politely explained my friends didn't relieve themselves on my property. They hung up with a chuckle, leaving me utterly alone with my growing dread. The next morning, the escalation intensified with terrifying speed. I walked down to the parking lot to find my car utterly ravaged. Windows smashed, tires slashed, paint keyed beyond recognition. It was a scene of pure, unadulterated destruction. The police, again, offered little solace. Their review of the security footage was futile. Every face was obscured by hoods. Panic began to set in. If they knew where I lived, if they could do this to my car, what else were they capable of? It seemed foolish, even dangerous, to stay. I booked a hotel room, a temporary escape from a nightmare I couldn't comprehend. I went back to my apartment building after work, intending to grab a few essentials and some comforts for my hotel stay. But as I turned the corner on my corridor, I saw it. My apartment door, hanging precariously off its hinges. My neighbor stood frozen, staring. And then I walked inside. The entire place had been systematically obliterated. My shower glass was shattered, my bed frame destroyed, my living room and kitchenette carpeted with shards of glass and porcelain. My walls were torn, my TV and laptop obliterated. But the most gut-wrenching sight, the one that truly broke me, was my fish tank, smashed, my beloved fish, dead. Systematically being destroyed, piece by agonizing piece, and I had no idea why. This wasn't just vandalism anymore. This felt like a targeted campaign of terror. And the security footage from this incident, even more chilling. These weren't the same hooded figures from before. These were pros, dressed in all black, face masks, gloves. Their movements were deliberate, efficient, terrifyingly professional. It was clear then, I would never lay my head in that apartment again. But the torment wasn't confined to my home. A few days later, commuting by metro, turning onto East 47th, I heard someone call my name. Their voice sounded almost happy. Expecting to see an old friend, I turned. Instead, a complete stranger jogged up to me, unleashed a brutal punch square to my face, sending me sprawling, and then ran off, still shouting my name, punctuated with "You suck, dude. You suck." I was no longer safe anywhere. They could find me, track me, attack me, even in the middle of a bustling New York street. The police, finally, began to take me seriously, but I was in way over my head. Who were these people? Why me? What bizarre confrontation could possibly have escalated into such a campaign of terror? The questions gnawed at me, relentless, unanswered. The physical attacks were horrifying, but the real torment was the mystery behind them. Who was doing this, and why? The answer, shockingly, lay hidden in the darkest corners of the internet. The online world feels vast and anonymous, but what if a simple post there could trigger a real-life nightmare? How deep do you have to go to uncover the truth when your life is falling apart? And who dares to help you navigate this digital labyrinth? After the brutal, bewildering punch in the street that left me stunned and bleeding, after my apartment was grotesquely ransacked, its contents shattered, and my beloved pet fish tragically killed in the cruelest way imaginable, I was utterly adrift. The physical attacks were horrifying, leaving me bruised and scarred, but the true torment, the soul-shattering weight that crushed me, was the profound, suffocating mystery. Who was doing this, and why? The police, bless their overworked hearts, seemed as lost as I was, offering theories ranging from a twisted, escalating prank to a random, unexplainable spree by a truly deranged individual. But I knew better. This wasn't random. This was intensely targeted, chillingly deliberate, and escalating at a terrifying, relentless pace. I spent my nights jumping from cheap hotel to cheap hotel, my body exhausted, my mind a ceaseless churn of fear, confusion, and a burgeoning paranoia that made every shadow a threat, every car that slowed nearby send my heart into a frantic drumbeat. I felt completely exposed, relentlessly vulnerable, with absolutely nowhere left to turn, no corner of the world where I felt truly safe. Then, a few nights later, while still trapped in that state of desperate, suffocating confusion, my phone buzzed insistently on the hotel desk. The screen simply read "number private." Every fiber of my being screamed not to answer. My paranoia had reached critical mass. Who else could it be but another tormentor? But some tiny, stubborn flicker of hope amidst the despair, weary of running, weary of the unknown, compelled me to swipe and bring the phone to my ear. A deep, self-assured, calm voice filled the oppressive silence. "Can I speak to my name?" he asked, his tone professional, unhurried, yet undeniably competent. My heart leaped into my throat, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Was this another one of them asterisk? Cautiously, barely above a whisper, I confirmed my identity. The man introduced himself as Odin, quickly clarifying it wasn't his real name, just a handle. He worked for some tech company out west, he casually mentioned, and he had, quite by chance, come across some of my personal information online. At first, I assumed he meant my publicly available social media profiles or perhaps my email address and phone number listed on my employer's corporate website. Okay, so what? I remember thinking, my patience threadbare, my mind braced for a new scam. But then he started reeling off details that chilled me to the bone, details no stranger, no common scammer, no ordinary prankster should ever know, or could ever know. My full name, my exact apartment address, the one I was planning on moving out of, specific, less circulated photos of me, even a meticulously detailed history of my employment. A cold dread, far worse than any physical blow I'd endured, seeped into my very bones. How did he know all this? And more terrifyingly, was he connected to my tormentors? Was this some new, even more elaborate form of psychological torture, designed to push me over the edge? Then came the bombshell, the revelation that would finally unravel the nightmarish knot of my life. He told me all this deeply personal and highly sensitive information was readily available for anyone to read on a website he called DocSpin. The name meant absolutely nothing to me, just a jumble of alien syllables that held no discernible meaning. Odin, sensing my bewilderment, patiently explained that DocSpin wasn't on the surface web, the internet we all use every day. No, this site was located on what he referred to as the deep web or even the dark web, a hidden, unindexed portion of the internet that you couldn't access with regular browsers. You needed special software, a specific kind of anonymous browser like Tor, designed to anonymize your online activity by routing your data through a labyrinthine series of global, volunteer-operated servers, effectively masking your identity and location. He offered to send screenshots, and I agreed, my hands trembling uncontrollably as I waited for the images to load, a morbid, desperate curiosity battling fiercely with an overwhelming, primal sense of dread. What appeared on my screen was a sickening, enraging revelation, a digital knife twisted deep into my soul. There, in plain text, was a profile created under my name, meticulously detailed with all my personal information, alongside the most grotesque, fabricated accusations imaginable. The post claimed I had multiple, unproven convictions for unimaginable crimes involving children, painting a vile, baseless picture of me as a dangerous predator trying to disappear and start a new life after fleeing trumped-up charges in Ohio and Illinois. It was a complete, malicious, and utterly baseless lie, a vile fabrication designed not just to destroy my reputation, but, as I now understood with horrifying, sickening clarity, to incite real-world violence against me. It was a call to arms for anonymous online vigilantes. In that horrifying, nauseating moment, everything clicked into place with a sickening thud. The cryptic "can't nobody help you, homie?" from the first guy in the parking lot, the unbelievably disgusting and deliberate act of defecation on my apartment door, the savage, unprovoked destruction of my car, the random, violent punch in broad daylight, it all connected, sickeningly, to this meticulously crafted digital smear campaign. These weren't random acts of violence or juvenile pranks, They were vigilante justice attacks, fueled by a completely false, yet incredibly dangerous, narrative spread on a hidden, shadowy corner of the internet. It was a chilling, perverse logic, one that made my stomach churn with a mixture of fear and pure, unadulterated rage. I realized my initial, seemingly minor confrontation with the guy in the parking lot must have somehow led him or his associates to this doxing site, or perhaps he was the very one who posted it himself. The audacity, the sheer, unbridled malice of it, left me speechless, grappling with an impotent fury I hadn't known I possessed. Odin, it turned out, was a white hat hacker, someone who used his formidable computer wizardry and deep understanding of the internet's underbelly for good. He patiently explained his methodical process for tracing the seemingly anonymous post. He hadn't started with my name. Instead, he'd logically looked into recent employee departures from my company and, through some impressive digital sleuthing, found a disgruntled former colleague who fit the profile of someone who knew their way around anonymous browsers and harbored a grudge. This particular individual, he discovered, also maintained a public blog on the surface web, which Odin had meticulously perused at his leisure. It was there he noticed an almost identical writing style, a peculiar phrasing, a consistent turn of phrase, between the blog posts and the anonymous, malicious post on Doxbin. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with an alarming precision. When he finally dropped the name of the man whose performance review I had conducted just months prior, the review that had ultimately contributed to his termination from the company, a wave of sickening clarity washed over me, almost knocking the air from my lungs. This was it. This was the source of my living nightmare. He was lazy, unkempt, rarely showed up on time, and barely got his work done. But apparently, beneath that greasy, indifferent surface, our boy was as skilled with a computer as he was vindictive and utterly unhinged. This man, fired for being a poor performer, had chosen to unleash this horrifying, life-altering campaign of terror against me as an act of pure, unadulterated revenge. The injustice, the sheer disproportionate nature of his response, was almost unbearable. The call went on, and then came the part that made my paranoia spike again with an almost physical force. Odin asked for money, a few $1,000s in Bitcoin, to get his network of friends, his anonymous fellow white hats, to help him break into the website and permanently take down the post. My mind immediately screamed scam. Was he the original poster, now trying to extort me after putting me through hell? Odin seemed to sense my suspicion, his voice remaining calm, amused by my predictable reaction. He calmly argued that if all he wanted was money, there were 100 easier, less convoluted ways to scam or extort me, without the elaborate setup, the detailed explanation, and the tangible proof he'd just provided. Then he made an offer that, given my desperate situation, I simply couldn't refuse. He would successfully take the post down asterisk before asterisk I sent him any payment. This act of genuine good faith, combined with my sheer, bone-deep desperation for the nightmare to finally end, was enough to finally sway me. The next 10 days were a blur of anxious, nerve-wracking waiting, a fragile period of calm. Odin checked in daily, a strange digital guardian angel, reassuring me that he was working, and warning me that while new attacks wouldn't be incited by the now targeted post, there was still a chance those who had already seen it and believed the lies might act. But to my immense relief, no further incidents occurred at my old apartment building. The constant dread began to recede, replaced by a fragile sense of hope. On the 10th day, just as promised, Odin messaged me. The post had vanished from Doxbin. It was gone. I immediately converted the agreed-upon amount into Bitcoin and, through a complex, anonymous digital process, transferred it to his digital wallet. Odin called back briefly, a simple, sincere, thanks, before the line went dead. I tried calling him back moments later to express my overwhelming, profound gratitude, to ask if I could ever enlist his services again, but the number was already disconnected. He was gone, as mysteriously as he had appeared, a ghost in the machine. The attacks stopped. The terrifying uncertainty began to recede, replaced by a fragile, tentative sense of peace. But a nagging doubt, a persistent seed of paranoia, remained. Had Odin truly been a benevolent helper, a digital white knight, or was he part of a larger, more intricate scheme, a sophisticated form of blackmail from which I had just extricated myself? I needed to know for sure, to finally put my mind at rest and exorcise the lingering demons. I pulled a favor from an HR contact at my old company and, pretending to be conducting an informal survey, managed to get the private contact number for my former colleague, the man Odin claimed was behind it all. With a feigned cheerful voice, a performance worthy of an Oscar, I called him. I offered my condolences about his termination, even hinting at a potential new job opening at another company, hoping to completely disarm him and elicit a genuine response. He sounded surprised, perhaps even a little flattered by my unexpected call, but conspicuously, chillingly, he showed no anger or hostility towards me, no hint of the bitterness I expected. Then, as our conversation meandered to an awkward, polite end, just as I was about to hang up, I delivered the line I had rehearsed countless times in my head, the ultimate test. "By the way," I said, my voice carefully neutral, almost nonchalant, "I know what you did." The silence on the other end was deafening, a profound, damning, almost palpable silence that stretched for an eternity. There was no denial, no confusion, no "her? What are you talking about?" Just absolute, incriminating silence, pregnant with unspoken guilt, followed by a sharp, final click as he abruptly hung up. That was all the confirmation I needed. Odin hadn't lied. My former colleague, fueled by a petty grievance and a twisted sense of revenge, had indeed orchestrated this living hell upon me. This chilling revelation, while deeply disturbing, brought a strange, undeniable sense of peace. I finally understood the why, and that understanding was more crucial than any legal retribution. I realized he hadn't denied it because he probably knew I was recording the call, which, you can bet your bottom dollar, I was, and didn't want to provide any verifiable admission. He got away with the physical attacks, yes, but I got what I needed most: peace of mind, the cessation of terror, and a clear understanding of the sinister forces at play. I moved away from New York, leaving behind the shattered remnants of my old life, my apartment, my car, my former career, and built a new one on the West Coast, even changing professions entirely to truly start fresh. I am happy now, truly happy. But the experience instilled in me a permanent vigilance. I am acutely, painfully aware of my digital footprint and the insidious ways information can be weaponized in the darkest corners of the internet by deeply disturbed individuals. My journey through this nightmare left an invisible scar, a constant reminder of how fragile our sense of security can be. This doxing was a chilling wake-up call to the true, destructive power of the deep web. It showed me how a seemingly simple personal vendetta, amplified and anonymized by online spaces, could unleash such real-world terror, turning an ordinary life into a living hell overnight. But if one individual's malice could lead to such devastating, unforeseen consequences, what other unspeakable horrors, what truly monstrous realities, lurk beneath the surface, far from the familiar light of the regular internet? You've heard the whispers, the urban legends of the dark web's darkest secrets. But what if those horrifying rumors of red rooms and human trade were shockingly real? And who dares to venture into this abyss to fight the monsters within? The digital tormentor from our last story was unmasked, a chilling reminder of how a seemingly anonymous online act could shatter a life in the physical world. But that was just the shallow end of a truly horrifying ocean. What I stumbled upon next, after delving deeper into the abyss, was a realm of pure, unadulterated terror, the rumored red rooms and the grim reality of human trafficking marketplaces. My initial forays into the dark web were driven by academic curiosity, a desire to understand its architecture and its purpose. But the more I explored, the more I brushed against the sinister underbelly. Mentions of illicit goods and forums discussing unethical acts were chilling enough. But the whispers of red rooms, live-streamed events where unspeakable acts were performed for a paying audience, was something else entirely. At first, I dismissed them as urban legends, dark fantasies exaggerated to fuel the dark web's mystique. But the persistent, unsettling details, the eerie certainty in some users' accounts, gnawed at me. Could something so depraved truly exist? I found myself drawn into a morbid quest for truth, a dangerous curiosity that defied my better judgment. The search was a descent into digital madness. I navigated through layers of cryptic forums, veiled chat rooms, and directories with names that felt like warnings. Each click was a step further into a morally desolate landscape. I found myself on sites with stark, black and white pages, filled with ominous links. Some demanded passwords or cryptocurrency. My instincts screamed at me to stop, to close the browser, to sever all ties with this disturbing quest. But a part of me, a part one now regret, needed to know. Were these just elaborate hoaxes, or was there truly a corner of the internet where human suffering was a commodity? The most unnerving moments came when I found threads where individuals claimed to have witnessed these events firsthand. They spoke of encrypted invitations, astronomical Bitcoin payments, and fleeting access to streams hosted on obscure, untraceable servers. The accounts were disturbingly plausible, painting a picture of calculated cruelty. The casualness with which some discussed these topics, the cold detachment, was perhaps the most unsettling aspect of all. It was as if societal norms had been stripped away, replaced by an anonymity that fostered the darkest desires. I kept telling myself I was observing, not participating. I was there to understand, not to engage. But the line blurred with every revelation. The sheer weight of what the dark web could be, the sinister potential lurking behind every encrypted link, pressed down on me. The rumors of red rooms, once dismissed, now felt terrifyingly real. My fingers trembled as I typed in the Bitcoin payment, a sum that tightened my chest. The link resolved to a blank page, a countdown timer ticking away. It felt like stepping into a macabre horror film, a sick, twisted game. Every second was an internal scream, questioning my decision to cross this line. When the timer hit 0, the screen flickered, and a grainy video feed appeared. The room was stark, clinical, lit by harsh fluorescent lights that cast sharp, unsettling shadows. A figure, strapped to a table, writhed. Their face was contorted in fear, their muffled cries barely audible through a gag and the poor audio quality. The chat panel alongside the video erupted. Anonymous viewers typed messages, some urging the host to proceed, others requesting specific acts, specific forms of torment. It was horrifying. Not just the acts themselves, which defied comprehension, but the casual, detached cruelty of the audience. They treated it like a perverse spectacle, a form of entertainment, as if the person on the table wasn't a human being. I don't know how long I watched, minutes that felt like an eternity, before my stomach rebelled. The host, a man in a lab coat, began his experiments: injections, electrical currents, devices designed to test the very limits of human pain. The victim's agony was palpable, even through the screen. And the audience cheered, their requests growing more depraved with every passing moment. It was pure, unfiltered sadism, masquerading as something else entirely. I forced myself to close the browser, slamming my laptop shut. I sat there in the suffocating silence, hands trembling, an overwhelming sense of sickness and guilt washing over me. The reality was far, far worse than any rumor. It wasn't a myth. This was real, and it was happening. Somewhere, hidden in the depths of that shadowy network. This harrowing journey into the darkest corners of the internet often leaves one feeling helpless, consumed by the sheer evil that lurks there. But there are those who venture into the abyss not to witness, but to fight. They are the white hat hackers, the unseen warriors who dedicate their lives to dismantling these digital horrors. My work is a grim business. Most days, I sit in the blue glow of monitors, my fingers flying over keyboards, tearing down vile markets, mapping the trails that lead to the monsters hiding in the shadows. I've seen horrors beyond imagination, things no one should ever witness. But one case, more than any other, haunts me. It began with a routine sweep of a marketplace buried deep in the dark web's underbelly. It advertised human lives as commodities, young and old, with glossy images and chillingly cold descriptions. This wasn't just another site, it was a digital fortress, polished, professional, insidiously quiet, almost daring anyone to break in. Unraveling its layers of security was slow, grueling, frustrating work. But no system is impenetrable. By the end of the third day, I was in. The database was vast, chillingly detailed, victims' names, ages, photos, and precise descriptions of their usefulness. Each profile was a silent scream, a desperate plea buried in ones and zeros. I began extracting the data, piecing together patterns, names, connections, meticulously logging everything to build a dossier for the authorities. Then I found her. A girl, no older than 12, from the Philippines. Her photo showed a child with wide, frightened eyes and a forced, unnatural smile. Her profile description made my stomach churn. But something else stood out, an odd note in the metadata, a small breadcrumb left behind. It was a payment log, and it didn't lead to a buyer. It led back to her family. I cross-referenced her name through every database available, missing persons reports, social media, news articles. The trail was faint, but undeniably there. She had disappeared months ago from a small village, a disappearance barely noted by local news, never reported by her parents. Instead, their lives had taken a curious turn. I found pictures of them on Facebook, standing in front of a newly built house, posts bragging about a blessing that had come their way. Expensive clothes, lavish parties, smiles plastered across their faces. It didn't add up. Where does a poor family suddenly acquire that kind of wealth? The pieces clicked. A grotesque puzzle I wished I hadn't solved. They sold her. Their own flesh and blood, handed over to monsters for a better life. I stared at the screen, bile rising in my throat. It wasn't just the marketplace that sickened me. It was the betrayal, the abandonment, the cold calculation that turned a child into currency. I had always kept my work professional, detached. But this time, I couldn't. She wasn't just a name in a database. She was a girl, discarded, her life ripped apart by the very people who were supposed to love her most. I dug deeper into her family's financial records, private messages. Every transaction told a damning story, the large deposit coinciding with her disappearance, the gradual splurge on luxuries. They weren't just complicit, they were thriving off her suffering. The more I uncovered, the more anger seeped in. My work was about dismantling systems, not judging individuals. But this felt personal. Her image haunted me, that forced smile, the terror in her eyes. I compiled the evidence for weeks, building an airtight case for the authorities. That was my job. But with each passing day, the thought of her family living in comfort while she suffered gnawed at me. They had bought their happiness with her life. It was monstrous. One night, sifting through the last of the data, I made a decision. I wouldn't just hand over the evidence and walk away. I would make them feel the weight of what they'd done. They couldn't be allowed to forget her, to erase her as if she were nothing. I crafted an email, anonymous and untraceable, attaching photos of their daughter from the marketplace, blurred just enough to protect her dignity, but unmistakable. No words, just images. I wanted them to see her, to remember. I'll never know if they opened it, but I imagined the guilt festering inside them like a rot. It wasn't justice, not truly, but it was something. The marketplace was gone within days, wiped clean from the dark web. My work there was done, and the authorities had the evidence they needed to begin tracking that network. But her face, that little girl's face, has stayed with me, a ghost I can't exorcise. I want to believe she's still alive somewhere, that the system I helped dismantle gave her a chance at freedom. But I know better. The dark web doesn't easily release its victims. Still, I keep working, tearing down one monster at a time. Because if I don't, who will? The chilling stories we've uncovered today, from hidden dangers in everyday finds to the unseen horrors of the digital world, serve as stark reminders. Life is fragile, and the line between safety and peril can be terrifyingly thin. But as we navigate this complex world, whether offline or online, vigilance is our greatest defense. Be aware of your surroundings, question the seemingly innocent, and always protect your digital footprint. Support those fighting for justice in the shadows. And remember, the greatest weapon against the darkness is always knowledge, awareness, and the unwavering resolve of those who dare to shine a light.